Good evening and welcome to Smart Entrepreneurship Decoded on Transcontinental Times. I have often spoken to you and told you that I live in Jakarta, Indonesia. When you hear of Indonesia, what comes to your mind? Most probably, you think of Bali. Many people are surprised that Bali is part of Indonesia. They think it's some other exotic place. You think of a lot of extraction industries, energy, mining, etc. You don't exactly think of startups as the first item at the top of your head. But Jakarta has a vibrant startup ecosystem. In fact, across Indonesia, a steady change is taking place, spurred by the government, spurred by various individuals, various organizations. A startup movement of sorts is taking place across the country, mainly in hubs like Jakarta, Surabaya, Bali, and many others. And when I compare this to what has happened in some of the other more developed ecosystems, like the ones in Eastern Europe, the ones in India recently, you can see the direction that it is headed in. In fact, it is ranked as one of the top 5 upcoming startup ecosystems of the world. For the last 5 years, I have observed this ecosystem closely, worked with the government, worked with various private players, and met thousands of entrepreneurs across the country. So tonight I thought, why not have a guest who knows this ecosystem really well from various angles? So our guest tonight is an accomplished corporate professional who has also worked in the academia for creating content for entrepreneurs, for helping colleges set up and universities set up startup ecosystems in terms of incubators and accelerators. And for the past few years, he's the managing director for the Indonesian chapter of the Global Entrepreneurship Network. Please welcome our guest tonight, Pa Ivan Sandjaja. Good evening, Pa Ivan. How are you?
Thank you. Great. Thank you, Nalin.
So, Pa Ivan, we've heard a lot about of other parts of the world. How exactly and what exactly is happening in Indonesia right now?
Very, very good question, Nalin. Uh, I have been bringing up this issue for a number of years because, unfortunately, in Indonesia, the so-called entrepreneurship ecosystem is rather dispersed and fractionated. Looking at the shape of the country itself, which is an archipelago, lots of islands and cities on these islands. So each and every place has its own ecosystem. And unfortunately, they're not so well connected with one another either. For example, we have an ecosystem here in Jakarta. We have an ecosystem in perhaps Bandung, Yogyakarta, even Bali, and just yesterday I saw a vibrant ecosystem in Sulawesi, in Makassar. Unfortunately, these ecosystems are not talking to each other. So let's say if I were an investor, a foreign investor, I come to Indonesia and I say, okay, let's see what's going on there. It's very difficult for me to have a helicopter view over the Indonesian ecosystem because I really need to go uh, down and do some deep dive investigations, getting to know people. Then I will probably find out something that is brewing or something that is going on here underground in the South Jakarta or Central Jakarta, things like that. So, as results, there are many startup companies founded by young people are actually they're duplicating one another too because they're problems are problems everywhere, right? I mean, and young people try to solve problems. Entrepreneurs are problem solvers, and they try to solve the problems, in Jakarta, and some try to solve the problem in Surabaya. Some try to solve the problem maybe in Medan. So there are many similar startups at the end, So if you go and visit those businesses, oh yeah, I know something that is very similar to your business out there. Yeah. So that is the
So
uh,
yeah, I
picture.
agree with you. There seems to be a lot of duplication. The island effect kind of plays out. Sometimes nothing wrong in that. Everybody can set up a good business. But looking at Jakarta, often we get caught up in the hype of the big funded startups, right? And invariably, most of them, not all, most of them are set up by Indonesians who have returned from overseas with an overseas education or are connected in some way, etc. Is that changing? Are we finding more and more local, uh, born and brought up Indonesians setting up successful companies?
Yeah, indeed. I mean, of course, if you are overseas graduates, I think many Indonesian also go to uh, countries like the US or Europe to get education. Certainly, I must honestly say that they have certainly better education system. And better education system will simply train them also to become a better professional. That is why if they want to start a business, because a business usually starts from a problem, the capability for them to identify and recognize problems. If you are a foreign graduate, of course you are better trained to discover that, right? Rather than if you are local graduates. Yeah. And I always say this, the reason why we have more B2C business rather than B2B business, because most of the young people do not have the experience being exposed to whatever problems there are in the business sectors. That is why their view is sort of limited only to what's going on out there around them. Yeah, where a lot of people live. That's why they come up with solutions
Yeah.
pretty much for B2C kind of business rather than B2B business.
So just hold that thought a bit because you bring up an important point. It is a very young country with the average age of 22. So are there certain skills for entrepreneurship that uh, Indonesians need to be particularly aware of? Uh, the one you have alluded to indirectly, that they don't quite get the B2B thing because of the networking and etc. that is required, and a certain degree of business maturity to deal with other businesses. But are there other skills that these young people need to work on?
Yeah. Well, actually, before we actually speak about skills, first and foremost, what they need to develop is the so called entrepreneurial mindset. Now, that's what most young people hear, even though they have probably started their own business, but not necessarily that they have entrepreneurial mindset. Yeah. Once they get the entrepreneurial mindset, then they need to acquire the so called entrepreneurial skills. Yeah, these are the skills for them. Let's say if they want to create a business that they must have, yeah, in order to be successful. But first, you need to get the so-called entrepreneurial mindset or develop or transform your mindset to become more entrepreneurial, which means basically as simple as being creative and innovative or having the habit of being creative and innovative. That's an entrepreneurial mindset.
Yeah. So without a doubt, that is the foundation. And I keep challenging people and asking them, can an entrepreneurial mindset be taught, or it is something that a person has? And I know people are divided. It's like a nature and nurture divide. But I'm not going to get into that. I'm going to take that thought in another direction, because you've worked a lot with universities
Yeah.
and you
The
have set up
answer, yeah, go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead,
and
Nalin.
you've set up a curriculum for entrepreneurs, etc.
Yeah.
And you worked with setting up incubators, accelerators.
Yes.
Now, I have observed the Indonesian university startup ecosystem as well, not as closely as you, but I have seen about 40, 50 universities. And I see a certain challenge. The challenge I see, and I would like you to elaborate on that from an outsider's perspective, is the incubator is filled with administrators, because it is an unfair ask on a college which is supposed to create job seekers to suddenly create job creators, because the input itself is of people with a fixed mindset. Now you are trying to convert that, and the incubator is full of administrators. There are no networkers or business mentors, etc. So the while the private incubators in cities like Jakarta, etc., full and packed to the brim, the university incubators are empty. Students, is it because we are trying to teach the very few growth mindset people that we have, we are trying to teach them entrepreneurship through a fixed curriculum? Or is there some other reason why the university incubators are empty?
Yeah. Now, the answer goes back to your first question then. Can entrepreneurship be taught? Yeah. And the answer, or is it maybe it's a trait that you are born with? My answer is always something in between the two. Entrepreneurship can be learned. Yeah. Because you don't necessarily teach entrepreneurship. Entrepreneurship is not something, like you're teaching mathematics or chemistry. Yeah. But entrepreneurship can be learned, except learning entrepreneurship, you have to know, let's say, the style, how to do it. Yeah. Because I think, especially here in Indonesia, where, I mean, I'm also advisors in several universities for the entrepreneurship program. I say, look, first and foremost, you need to understand as a faculty or as a dean or whatever, the leadership management of the university, you need to understand what you really want to achieve. Yeah. Because you cannot simply turn students to become entrepreneurs within 4 or 5 years. Yeah. But the students themselves have to be, have to have the willingness to become entrepreneur. Now, what most people misinterpret that, being an entrepreneur means that you must have a business. And a lot of universities also measure the performance of their entrepreneurship curriculum based on the number of businesses being created by the students, which is completely irrelevant. Because once again, when you talk about development of entrepreneurial mindset, you could have a very strong entrepreneurial mindset without having a business of your own. You can actually work for a company but still have an entrepreneurial mindset. You can work for the government, you can work for an NGO, you can even work for a political party. If you have an entrepreneurial mindset, you are an entrepreneur, except you don't have a business of your own. Now, that simply means that you are a creative and innovative person. You are able to identify and recognize problems and turn them into challenges and offer solutions. And I always say, remember, whenever you offer solutions, then you create another problems, and that will go on and on and on and on. But that's what they call entrepreneurial cycle. Yeah, you keep solving problems one after another. Yeah, as long as we live. Then
It's true.
the whole key goes back to the education, Nalin.
So, what can universities do? So, entrepreneurial mindset is essential for all walks of life, even if you want to be a preacher or anything. And there are very successful people in corporate life who are growing their companies twice, thrice over, including big ones like Microsoft, Google. The leaders have an entrepreneurial mindset. So, that mindset and that ability to use an entrepreneurial style of thinking or a growth mindset stands you in good stead whatever you do in life. What can Indonesian universities do to attract students to become entrepreneurs? Because there are historical reasons, right? I mean, we still have to get to a parents' hesitancy of uh, the children going into a high risk thing. Some of them are being pushed into it because there are no jobs or lesser jobs. Let's not say no jobs. So, what is it that universities can do more role models, more road shows, more ideation workshops, more mentors? What is it that they can do, and what is Gen doing about it?
What we are trying to sort of make them understand that if you want to actually create entrepreneur, you have to do the whole 9 yard from A to Z what is required. Meaning, you start certainly from your faculty members. If your faculty members are bureaucrats, don't expect them to be able to inspire the students to become entrepreneur. But again, in order to create entrepreneurs, it's not enough just to have entrepreneurial faculty members because students don't live on campus alone. They also live at home. Now, look at this. If the parents, let's say, are civil servants, policemen, it is likely that the children don't want to be entrepreneurs because oftentimes their parents want them to be like them. If father is a policeman, of course, he would probably like his son to become also policeman one day. If a father is a doctor, of course, he probably wants his son to also become a doctor someday. And just because you are a doctor, you have your own practice, you generate your own income, that does not mean that you are entrepreneur because you're not solving problem, you are curing people. Yeah, but you're not solving another problem, new problems. Yeah, so the whole thing has to be done. So that means you have to educate the faculty members, but you also have to educate the whole environment of the students. So by condition, you have to create this environment where basically students are pushed or poised to become entrepreneur. Then you will probably succeed. And the biggest challenge is certainly working with the faculty itself, because the faculty, like I said, a lot of them are pure academics. I mean, that's what they do almost their entire life. They never had a business before. Now, how can you teach someone to create their own business if you have never had your own business yourself? But on the other hand, most of the universities don't allow their faculty to have business or side business because, I mean, they should focus on their teaching job. Yeah. So that is the vicious circle, Nalin. Yeah. So, and I think as long as you cannot break that vicious circle, I mean, then you will be stuck with
Yeah.
the whole situation.
It was a lot like this in some of the other countries I mentioned earlier. But generally, the push from the population was higher. The desire from the population to do something was a little higher. We have a happier set of people here, but that the desire and the larger mass of people wanting to do it is not there, which is surprising. There are 7 million MSMEs, whatever size, whatever, however small. There are people struggling to get to do something to make ends meet and run businesses of some kind. But let's for a moment come to Jen. Jen has been in Indonesia for what, 5, 6 years now?
No, more than that. 11 years now,
11
almost
years.
12. Hmm.
Yeah. So what are you focusing on now? If we were to pick 2, 3 focus areas.
Yeah. Jen basically works with all ecosystem stakeholders, government, academia, business community, also ecosystem supporters like your good self, NGOs, foundations, incubators, accelerators, basically to try to create synergy among all the stakeholders. Because a lot of stakeholders, if they try to do their own thing, then they can only reach also a certain level where you say, if you would work together with some other partners, you might be able to achieve more. So this is what we believe. So we don't create new programs or create like our own incubator or our own accelerator, but we just help them find whatever the programs are. If we see that you have a good program, it's like, go to Orbit Future Academy because that's where you can actually get good education if you want to become entrepreneur. Then, if you decide that you want to become entrepreneur and you want to go abroad with your business, then we will also help you. We create a program for you with other partners who can probably create a soft landing programs that you can join in and help you to enter another international market, something like that. Yeah, that's what
So
we do.
that's it. That's interesting because we too have a strong philosophy on that. That every thing that you teach should lead to an outcome, and we also link people and have an exchange program with our centers in India and Silicon Valley. We send people across for experiences. I want to change track a bit and talk about something that I experience as a life coach, and I'm sure you also experience. In a young country like Indonesia, where the startup ecosystem is fairly young, new, if you remove that small percentile of overseas educated people, okay, the large mass of people, when we are asked to meet and mentor them, sometimes, especially on financial literacy, etc., sometimes the expectations and what they come with as dreams in their mind is so far removed from reality
Yeah.
that I feel inadequate to coach them. I feel as if, is something wrong with me? Have I learned the wrong things? You feel the gap is too large sometimes. What do you do in such a case? I mean, if you tell them the honest truth, you will basically tell them there's no hope because you're too far removed from reality. But there is a value for them going through that process, though they don't understand it at that point. What do you
Yeah.
do as a coach? How do you manage that
I mean,
personally?
you are absolutely right. I mean, I experienced that myself too. And oftentimes, a lot of young people associate business always with capital. They say, oh, you know what? I am so poor. I have no money. I cannot start a business whatsoever or create my own job. I said, that's a BS for me. Why? Because even if I would give you right now 1 billion rupiah, and you say, I say, you start something, then you probably come back to me and say, well, I don't know what to do with the money. So apparently, then the money is not the issue. Yeah. Because I always say, first, you train yourself to be able to identify problems and find the solutions. Then the money will follow. Yeah. So once again, Nalim, I mean, you have pointed exactly the core of the problem. And again, the answer to that is the education, the mindset. They have to change that. Yeah. It's not us that we are too far away from reality, but oftentimes these young people, I mean, they dream big, but oftentimes I say that dream is too big, that it is just a dream. Yeah, that is something that you cannot just materialize in a lifetime. Yeah, you also need to get grounded at some point. Of course, we say
True.
entrepreneurs have to dream, but on the other hand, you need also to be grounded once in a while. So then yeah, how to work smart and materialize whatever your desire or your dream is. Yeah, otherwise you just keep on dreaming.
So I'm a big supporter of Indonesia, and that's why I live here. I have a business here. I love when I travel outside of Jakarta, the sheer energy of the young people and desire to do something different. You can see that changing over time. You mentioned before in a pre-chat that you went to Makassar and you found such a large ecosystem, but a lack of mentors. So there is change happening. But I'm going to ask you a final question. Before people like you and me retire, and we are older than the general population. If you had
Yes.
if you had one wish that if you closed your eyes and in the startup ecosystem of Indonesia that got fixed, what would it be?
Oh, very good question. Well, look, you cannot change people. Yeah, people will change because they want themselves to change. What you can do is you can inspire them. You set examples for them. And I hope whatever legacy that I want to create for Gen Indonesia, for myself, is that I want to be remembered as someone who can actually help people to become successful if they want to be successful. But I cannot turn people to be successful simply by giving them money or whatever, but by giving them a set of tools or equip them with tools that can make them successful. There's always a saying,
I
right?
think
I
that is
mean,
a fantastic, final, and powerful thought to leave people with, that the people should be inspired, be it through role models, etc. You yourself have been an inspiration. You continue to be. I have heard you and I've been on panels with you, and I see the eloquence with which you speak, and it resonates with the audience. So thank you very much, Paiwan. Please continue doing the
thank you.
wonderful work that you're doing personally and through Jen. I wish you all the best, and thank you once again for joining me tonight. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Nalin. Thank you.